Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My best friend of 20 years slept with my husband of 12 years, got pregnant, and honestly believed I would forgive them. But what my mother did afterward left me completely speechless. My name is Tamara, and I need to let this story out of my body because if I keep it inside, I feel like it will eat me alive. My story starts, like many others, looking exactly like a fairy tale. My husband, Reggie, and I started dating when I was 21 and he was 23. We were together for nearly 2 years before he proposed, and we stayed married for 12 years. We built a life together. We had 2 beautiful children, our son, Jalen, and our little girl, Zoe. For a long time, it felt complete, especially because I had my best friend Tiffany by my side. 20 years. Tiffany and I had been best friends for 2 whole decades. Our mothers grew up together in the same neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, so Tiffany and I were basically raised like sisters. We shared everything: secrets, crushes, teenage heartbreaks, our first drinks, our college acceptances, our fears about the future. When I got my first job, she was the first person I called. When she experienced her first real heartbreak, I was the one holding her while she cried into my shoulder. We went to homecoming together, prom together, sorority events together. She knew every version of me. I honestly believed there was no one on earth I knew more deeply than Tiffany. When I met Reggie, it felt like my world slid into place. He was charming and intense, with a quiet vulnerability that drew me in from the first moment. He had not grown up with much, and there was a heaviness in his eyes when he spoke about his past. To my 21-year-old self, that pain made him seem deep and complicated. He felt so different from the other men I had dated, who seemed straightforward and easy to figure out. Reggie had layers. Reggie had scars. And I wanted desperately to be the person who made his life better. About a year into our relationship, he took me to meet his mother, Evelyn. I remember how nervous I was. I changed my outfit 3 times before finally settling on a conservative blue dress Reggie loved. "That color makes your eyes look so bright," he said, kissing my forehead. We drove to her small, perfectly neat house on the outskirts of Charlotte. When I stepped inside, I felt like I had walked into the color beige. The carpet was beige, the walls were beige, the sofa was beige, even her blouse and skirt were beige. It felt like stepping into a room with no air, as if someone had sucked all the color out of the world and replaced it with silence. Evelyn was a widow. Her husband had passed from a heart attack years before, and she had raised Reggie alone. They were close, almost too close. Reggie watched her with nervous, quiet attention, constantly searching her face for the smallest hint of approval. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it never reached her eyes. I tried so hard to impress her that day. I thanked her repeatedly for having me over, complimented her immaculate home, and presented her with an expensive pie from a popular bakery in Charlotte. She barely touched it. She looked at me with cold, assessing eyes that made me feel like I was applying for a job I did not qualify for. "So, Tamara," she asked, folding her hands carefully in her lap, "what does your father do exactly?" The way she emphasized exactly made my stomach twist. The truth was simple. The main reason Evelyn never warmed to me was because of where I came from. I grew up in an upper-middle-class Black family. My parents owned multiple businesses in North Carolina and Georgia. We were comfortable. We took trips to places like New York and Orlando. My parents paid for my college tuition and bought me a safe sedan at graduation, so I could commute to my first job without worrying about my car breaking down. What Evelyn never wanted to see was that my parents had started with nothing. My father grew up in a tiny rental house with 4 siblings and 1 bathroom. My mother shared a bedroom with 3 cousins, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. They worked hard, and they never let me forget where they came from. "Money is a tool, Tamara," my father, Leon, always said. "Not a recliner. You do not build your life on it. You use it to build your life." They supported me through school, but they also pushed me to stand on my own feet. I got a degree in marketing. I worked hard. I paid my own bills. After graduation, I never asked them for money again. I was proud of that. Reggie's life could not have been more different. His father had served in the military, was rarely home, and died when Reggie was young. Evelyn, as I later learned, had been a severe alcoholic when he was growing up. Reggie told me stories that broke my heart. Coming home from middle school to find her passed out on the sofa, trying to cook dinner for himself, figuring out which bills were most urgent so the lights would not be cut off. He got a job at McDonald's as a teenager, just so they would have groceries. He tried college, but dropped out because he hated his communications degree and could not stand sitting in classrooms while worrying about his mother at home. Eventually, he stumbled into freelance writing for blogs and small magazines. He was surprisingly good at it. He had a way with words that could make even a simple restaurant review sound meaningful. Yet through all of this, Evelyn treated him like her personal safety net. Even after he began earning, she expected a monthly allowance from him. "She is my mother," Reggie would say whenever I gently suggested he keep a little for himself. "I am all she has." And he would send her money, even when I saw his face tighten while clicking submit on the transfer. When our relationship got serious, about a year and a half in, I finally told him the full truth about my family and their businesses. We were having dinner at a nice Italian restaurant in uptown Charlotte. I remember stirring my pasta and feeling my heart race. "Reggie," I said quietly, "there is something I have not been completely open about." I told him the name of my family's company. At first, he laughed, thinking I was exaggerating. When he realized I was serious, he pulled out his phone and searched it. I watched his face change as he scrolled. The color drained from his cheeks. He put the phone down slowly and stared at me. "You have been lying to me this whole time," Reggie said, his voice low and tight. I reached for his hand. "No," I said quickly. "I was not lying. I just needed time. You have no idea how many men from my past only wanted to be with me because of my family's money. It is heavy, Reggie. It follows me everywhere. I needed to know that what we have is real before I brought that part into it." He eventually nodded, and he said he understood, but something invisible shifted that night. Every once in a while, small comments slipped out that stung more than I could admit. We would be out for dinner, and I would offer to pay. "It is my treat," I would say, and he would reply with a half smile. "Well, of course. It is not like you need to check your bank account." Or we would talk about our jobs, and I would mention a difficult project, and he would scoff gently and say, "You will never really know what it feels like to work for something from the bottom, Tamara." Not really. Each comment was small on its own, but they added up like paper cuts. I tried to brush them off. I told myself he was just insecure, that it would get better. I was 22 and in love. Love, I learned, can make you walk directly past red flags and pretend they are decorations. The real trouble started when we decided to move in together. I was so excited. I found a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment near downtown, a place with a tiny balcony, hardwood floors, and a fireplace that made me feel like we were already a family. I spent a whole weekend painting the living room a soft green. We carried boxes up the stairs, ordered pizza, and played music while we unpacked. It felt like a dream, 2 young Black professionals building a life together in the city. That first week, we sat on the living room floor eating leftover pizza straight from the box, surrounded by half-unpacked crates. Reggie put his slice down and cleared his throat. "So," he started, not looking at me, picking at the crust, about the lease and the rent. I smiled. "I was thinking we open a joint account," I said. "We both drop our bill money in there, and we split everything 50-50. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries. Easiest way, right?" His whole body tensed, and I saw his jaw clench. "I do not think that is fair," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" I asked. 50-50 is fair." "It is not," he replied, voice rising slightly. "You make almost double what I make. That does not even include your family's wealth. You come from old money, and I am still trying to find my footing while helping my mother. How is that equal?" I put my slice down slowly. "My family's money is not my personal wallet, Reggie," I said. "This is my paycheck we are talking about. We are partners. We split the bills." He stood up abruptly and started pacing. "Exactly," he said. "We are partners, which means you should want to help me. It should not be a problem for you to cover more, because you have more. Unless you are just like everyone else, holding money over my head." I stood too, heart pounding. "That is not what I am doing," I said. "I am trying to build something equal. That is all." His voice rose into a shout. "Equal? How is it equal that you had college paid for, and I had to drop out? How is it equal that you got a car, and I worked late nights at McDonald's? It is not equal, Tamara. If you really loved me, you would not want me to struggle." We argued for nearly an hour that night. He yelled. He sulked. He guilt me. He sat on the sofa with his head in his hands and said I reminded him of his father, who he claimed never took care of his mother. I tried to explain that I was not his father, that I loved him and wanted us both to have responsibility. Eventually, exhausted and desperate to stop the fight, I whispered, "Fine. I will cover the rent. But you have to split the utilities and groceries with me. That is the only way I can do this." He sighed, as though he were the one making a huge sacrifice. "Fine," he said, "if it has to be that way." Something broke inside me that night, but I did not yet know how deep the crack would run. 2 weeks later, I was tidying our small home office when I saw a receipt on his desk. It was from a jewelry store in Charlotte. He had bought Evelyn an expensive gold bracelet for her birthday. It cost more than his entire share of our monthly utilities. I felt my chest tighten. I had just moved money from my savings to cover the rent. I held the receipt and walked to the living room, trying to keep my voice calm. "Reggie," I said, "I am struggling to cover everything right now. I had to dip into my savings for the rent, and I see you bought your mother this bracelet. I am confused. You told me you had no money." His reaction was explosive and immediate. "Are you serious right now?" he snapped. "You are complaining about money again? Are you going through my desk now? Are you going to check my bank statements next?" He jabbed a finger toward the receipt. "My mother is a single, older woman who has nothing. She deserves something nice. She needs that money more than we do. I cannot believe you are trying to take food out of my own mother's mouth." Somehow, in that conversation, I became the villain. He made me feel like a greedy dragon sitting on a mound of gold, refusing to share. I folded in on myself. I stopped bringing up money. I just paid the bills in silence and told myself that sacrifice was what love owed. When Reggie proposed almost a year after we moved in, I clung to the hope that this meant all of the tension was temporary. He chose a random Tuesday evening. I came home from work exhausted, my feet aching in my heels, and was halfway through unbuttoning my blouse when he poked his head into the bedroom. "Hey," he said, "can you come outside? I want to show you something." I walked out into the backyard and saw that he had strung up cheap glittery fairy lights from the hardware store. I noticed my parents' car and Tiffany's car parked down the street, but I did not yet understand. Reggie stood there, nervous, holding a small ring box. He said some sweet things, I am sure, but I barely heard them because I was so startled. He knelt in the scruffy grass and asked me to marry him. Through the sliding glass doors, I suddenly saw silhouettes moving. My parents, Tiffany, her mother Sharon, some friends, all watching. After I said yes, they poured out onto the patio, cheering and hugging us. My mother, Carolyn, was crying. Tiffany screamed and threw her arms around me. Finally, Tiffany said, laughing, "Do you know how hard it was to help him pick that ring without you catching on?" At the edge of the crowd, Evelyn gave me a stiff, bony hug and leaned in close. "I have high expectations for you as a daughter-in-law," she whispered into my ear. "I hope you do everything in your power to keep my son happy." It did not sound like congratulations. It sounded like a warning, but I pushed that aside. My ring sparkled on my finger. My best friend was taking pictures. My parents were beaming. I told myself this was happiness, even if it arrived in a backyard with discount lights instead of a quiet beach at sunset or a special trip to New Orleans. Over the next months, Tiffany and Reggie grew closer. I never questioned it. Of course, my fiancé and my best friend would become friends. They were the two people I loved most. They had the same dry sense of humor. At parties, I would sometimes look around for Reggie and find him in a corner talking to Tiffany, both of them laughing. When I walked over, the conversation often paused for half a second, as if they needed to switch topics. Then Tiffany would smile brightly and say, "We were just laughing about that silly movie from college." It all seemed innocent. She had helped him pick my ring. She had helped him plan the proposal. Why would I ever suspect anything? We got married in a beautiful ceremony just outside Atlanta. My parents paid for most of it. The photographs looked like they belonged in a magazine. Black families dressed in their finest, laughing and dancing. My father walking me down the aisle, Reggie tearing up when he saw me. Tiffany stood beside me as my maid of honor, holding my bouquet, fixing my veil, whispering, "You are stunning, Tamara," as the photographer snapped away. Sharon hugged me with tears in her eyes and told me I was the daughter she never had, even though she had Tiffany. Everything looked perfect from the outside. After the wedding, nothing changed financially. If anything, the pattern hardened. I continued to pay for most of our life. I bought the house in Charlotte with a large down payment from my savings, but we called it our home. I paid for date nights, vacations, new furniture, and emergencies. Reggie insisted he was saving for our future. Whenever I tried to talk about money, it became a war. He would accuse me of being obsessed with control and unsupportive of his dreams, so I learned to stay quiet. Silence, unfortunately, became my survival skill. When I got pregnant with our son Jalen, I was both thrilled and terrified. The pregnancy hit me hard. The nausea was not limited to mornings. It was all day, relentless. I lost weight in my first trimester. I was dizzy at work, holding the conference table in meeting rooms to keep the room from spinning. At 6 months, my doctor frowned at my blood pressure readings. "I am concerned about preterm labor," he said. "You need to stop working and go on modified bed rest. This is not optional." I sat there with my hand on my belly and tried not to cry. When I told Reggie, I expected concern, some reassurance. Instead, he sat down slowly on the sofa and stared at the wall. "Quit your job," he repeated, voice flat. "How are we supposed to live, Tamara? How are we supposed to afford a child if you are not working?" Tears filled my eyes. "The doctor said I have to," I whispered. "He is worried about the baby." "I am scared, Reggie. I need you." He rubbed his forehead and sighed. "I care about the baby," he snapped. "I am just being realistic. Your savings will not last forever. What is the plan?" That night, I called my parents. I sat on the edge of the bed, one hand over my belly, and poured everything out. The difficult pregnancy, the doctor's orders, Reggie's reaction, the truth about how I had been covering most of our expenses for years. My mother's response shocked me. "Well, he has a point," Carolyn said, voice brisk. "It is a lot of pressure on him. Plenty of mothers keep working through pregnancy. Are you sure you are not being a little delicate?" "Delicate?" I repeated, stunned. The doctor put me on bed rest. "Doctors are overly cautious," she replied. "You have a healthy baby. You need to be strong." My father took the phone next. "Tamara," Leon said, his voice low with anger. "Put your mother back on the line." I heard him tell Carolyn, "What is wrong with you?" before the line went dead. Then he called Reggie directly. I was not on that call, but I saw the effect. Reggie walked into the bedroom pale and shaken. Later, he told me my father had reminded him about the prenuptial agreement he had insisted I sign before the wedding, a document that protected my inheritance, the house, and my assets. My father told Reggie that if he continued to treat me like a burden during a high-risk pregnancy, divorce would be the best option. That single word, divorce, landed like a slap. Suddenly, Reggie changed. For the first time in our relationship, he stopped sending his mother her allowance. He began paying the household bills. I still covered the mortgage from my savings, but he started doing the things he should have been doing all along. He brought me water, asked if I needed anything, pretended to be attentive. I knew it was fueled by fear, not love. Evelyn blamed me immediately for the cutoff, and her dislike hardened into open resentment. When Jalen was born, I was over the moon and deeply exhausted. He was perfect, a soft brown face, soulful eyes, a head full of soft curls. Everyone came to the hospital. My parents, Evelyn, Tiffany. Tiffany practically moved into the room, sleeping on the uncomfortable cot, handing me Jalen so I could nap, bringing iced chips, brushing my hair. "You did it," she whispered one night as I drifted in and out. "You are a mother, Tamara. He is perfect." Reggie, meanwhile, seemed to hover at the edges. He took a few photos and then left early, claiming he had worked deadlines and that hospitals made him uncomfortable. Once I came home, the weight of motherhood crashed down on me. I was terrified I would break Jalen. My father and Sharon were incredible. They came over often, cooked for us, rocked him so I could shower. Sharon would take one look at my tired face and say, "Go lie down. I have him." Evelyn, however, sat stiffly on my sofa and criticized everything. "You really should start losing that baby weight," she said once while I was still wearing my hospital bracelet. "Reggie does not want a wife who lets herself go." Another time, she watched Jalen fuss in his bassinet. "Are you going to let him cry like that?" she asked. "You will spoil him if you pick him up too much. But if you ignore him, you will damage him. You just cannot win, can you?" She never once criticized her son, who hardly picked his child up. After Jalen's birth, I sank into a darkness I did not have words for at the time. I was more than tired. I felt hollow. I could sit in a room full of people and still feel isolated. I would look at Jalen and feel nothing but fear and emptiness. I cried constantly, sometimes for no clear reason. Later, I learned that I was experiencing postpartum depression. I tried to tell Reggie. "Please," I begged one night at 3 a.m, holding a screaming Jalen. "Can you take him for 1 hour so I can sleep? I feel like I am breaking apart." Reggie rolled over, pulled a pillow over his head, and said, "He needs his mother. I do not know what to do with him. You are the one at home. Stop being dramatic." He did not change diapers. He did not do midnight feedings. He did not take Jalen for even 30 minutes, so I could stand under a hot shower and feel human. The weight pressed in on me from all sides. The baby, the house, the marriage, Evelyn's comments, my mother's refusal to acknowledge my mental health. One afternoon, when Jalen was 2 months old, he cried for what felt like hours. I tried to make a simple grilled cheese sandwich and burned it black. The smoke alarm shrieked. I turned off the stove and sank to the kitchen floor, sobbing so hard my chest hurt. I stared at the charred sandwich and thought, I cannot even feed myself. I am a failure as a wife and a mother. Desperate, I reached out to my parents again. Leon flew in the next day. He held Jalen, kissed my forehead, and told me we would get through it. He arranged for a therapist and offered to hire a night nurse if needed. My mother, however, refused to acknowledge what I was going through. Postpartum depression, Carolyn scoffed over the phone. In my day, we just called it being tired. You have a healthy baby. Be grateful. You need to stop wallowing. It is unattractive. When I complained about Reggie's lack of involvement, she scolded me. He is working now, is he not? That is what your father insisted on. You cannot expect him to do everything. You need to be a better mother. My only consistent support, aside from my father and Sharon, was Tiffany. She would show up, look at my unwashed hair and hollow eyes, and gently take Jalen from my arms. "We are going for a walk," she would say, buckling him into a stroller. We would walk around the neighborhood, and I would fall apart on park benches, telling her everything. How unwanted I felt, how invisible I was to my husband, how crushed I felt by my mother's criticism. Tiffany would listen, rub my back, and say, "He is a terrible husband, Tamara. Truly, I am disappointed in your mother too. You deserve better than this." I clung to that validation like oxygen. I believed Tiffany was my lifeline. A year later, I found out I was pregnant again. I sat in the bathroom staring at the 2 lines on the test, my heart hammering. I cried for a week. The postpartum depression had barely lifted, and my marriage was fragile at best. I had been on birth control, but in the fog of exhaustion, I must have missed some pills. When I told Reggie, his face went cold. "You have to end it," he said flatly, standing in the kitchen with his arms folded. "You need to schedule an appointment as soon as possible. We cannot afford another baby. We cannot even handle the one we have." "We," I repeated. "I am the one handling everything. I am not doing that, Reggie. I will not." His anger flashed. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You were supposed to manage the birth control. You did this. You are trying to trap me." We had a massive argument. In the end, I knew one thing clearly. I needed to go back to work. I could not rely on him for anything. I contacted my old boss in Charlotte. She was thrilled to hear from me. "We were planning a promotion for you before you left," she said. "If you come back, we can fast-track you into a senior role." For a few months, I worked from home as a freelancer, then eased back into a full-time senior position. My second pregnancy with Zoe was as difficult as the first. I was nauseated, exhausted, and worried constantly. This time, I made a quiet decision. I stopped depositing my entire paycheck into our joint account. Instead, I opened a private account in my name and kept half of my salary there. The other half went into the joint account for household expenses. I did not tell Reggie. It was my secret, my escape plan. As soon as my income stabilized again, Reggie started to complain about his job. He stared at his computer in the evenings and said, "I hate this. My boss is incompetent, the work is boring, and I am miserable. I just want a break." I tried to be practical. "You do not have a degree," I reminded him gently one night. "You need the stability. We have Jalen, and Zoe is on the way. Please do not do anything impulsive." He bristled. He hated being reminded that he had dropped out of college. One night, he snapped, "You got to take a break when you were pregnant with Jalen. I deserve a break too." I stared at him, stunned. "I was not on a break," I said, voice shaking. "I was on bed rest. I was carrying our child, struggling to stay healthy. That is not the same as you sitting on the couch playing video games." It did not matter. Reggie quit his job anyway. "We have enough," he said. "You are earning well again. I will figure out my next step." His next step was the sofa, or his friend Lonnie's apartment. Lonnie was a bitter, middle-aged man whose ex-wife had left him after he cheated on her. He turned that into a hatred for women in general. The one time I met Lonnie, he called me the ball and chain and joked about Reggie needing freedom. I told Reggie I did not like him. Reggie laughed it off. Soon, Reggie spent his days either in his boxers on our couch, yelling into his headset while playing video games, or at Lonnie's place doing the same thing. I woke up early, got Jalen ready, dropped him at my parents' house, worked all day, picked him up, made dinner, bathed him, and cleaned the house while pregnant and aching. Reggie would glance up when I came home and say, "Is dinner almost ready? I am starving." After months of this, I reached my breaking point. I told him, "You need to spend your days looking for a job. I cannot carry this alone. I am done." He did not like being told what to do, so he started claiming he was going to Lonnie's to network and clear his head. I knew better. The day I went into labor with Zoe, he was there. My contractions started hard and fast. I called Reggie, straight to voicemail. I texted, "I am in labor. I am going to the hospital." No response. My parents rushed me to the emergency room. My father drove while my mother sat in the back seat with me, gripping my hand and telling me to breathe. I delivered Zoe 2 hours later. Reggie walked into the room 6 hours after her birth, hair damp as if he had just showered. "My phone died," he said, shrugging. "Look at her. She is beautiful." I was too numb to yell. The next day, Tiffany arrived at the hospital with a huge bouquet. "I am so sorry," she said breathlessly, hugging me. "I was stuck in a horrible meeting, and my phone was on silent. I feel so guilty I missed your calls." I believed her and told her it was all right, that I was just glad she was there now. After we came home with Zoe, nothing changed with Reggie. He set up his game console in the living room. One afternoon, I watched him slip his headset on while Zoe slept in my arms and Jalen played with toy cars at my feet. Something inside me snapped. "Reggie," I said quietly. He did not respond. "Reggie." He paused his game and looked up, annoyed. "What?" "This is your last chance," I said. My voice sounded strange, even to me. "You go back to work. You find a job. You start being a father. Or I will pack our things and take the children, and I will leave. I am done raising them alone." The fight that followed was volcanic. He shouted. He punched a wall. He accused me of threatening him. For the first time, I did not back down. I did not bend. Something in my eyes must have told him I meant every word. Suddenly, his shoulders slumped. "You are right," he said quietly. "I have been wrong. I will start looking for a job tomorrow. I promise." I wanted to believe him so badly. The next morning, he showered and left his phone on the nightstand while he got ready. I was gathering laundry from the hamper when I heard his phone ping. On the lock screen, I saw a message from a familiar number, Tiffany. The preview read, "Will you be telling her about us? I am pregnant and cannot hide it much longer." Time stopped. I stared at those words until my vision blurred. Pregnant. Us. My best friend. My husband. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. When Reggie stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, humming, he saw me standing there holding his phone. He froze. "Tamara," he stammered, "wait. That is not what it looks like." "What is it then?" I asked, my voice frighteningly calm. "Is she joking about being pregnant? Is us a joke?" He reached for the phone. I pulled it back, then put it down slowly on the dresser. And then I slapped him as hard as I have ever slapped anyone in my life. The sound cracked through the room. His face reddened instantly where my hand had landed. His eyes went wide with shock. I looked at him and said very clearly, "You are dead to me." Then I turned away, grabbed a suitcase, and began to pack. I packed my clothes. I packed Jalen's dinosaur backpack and Zoe's diaper bag. I buckled my children into their car seats with shaking hands. Reggie stood in the doorway, babbling excuses about confusion and misunderstandings. I did not answer. I drove us straight to my parents' house. When my father opened the door and saw me on the porch with a newborn in my arms, a toddler at my side, and luggage behind me, his face crumpled. "What happened?" Leon asked, voice trembling. I stepped into the hallway and collapsed. Between sobs, I told them everything, the text, the pregnancy, the affair. My mother kept saying, "Are you sure? That does not sound like Tiffany. Maybe you misunderstood." My father's face, however, hardened with each detail. For 2 days straight, I cried until my eyes were raw. Reggie and Tiffany called, texted, and left voicemails nonstop. Reggie begged me to at least hear him out. Tiffany sent a long, winding message explaining everything. When I finally felt strong enough, I opened her text. She wrote that she had not meant for it to happen, but she had fallen in love with Reggie. She wrote that he was broken and needed someone who understood him. She claimed that now she was going to be a mother, she had to put herself first, which was why she had pressured him to tell me. Then came the line I will never forget. Besides, Tamara, you should be happy. You were always complaining about him. You wanted to leave, but did not have the courage. I did it for you. I am taking him off your hands. You are welcome. I read those last 2 words over and over. You are welcome. My hands shook with rage. I typed 1 sentence in reply. Enjoy him. Then I blocked her. Reggie's messages were pathetic. He admitted that he had slept with her, but insisted it was just a meaningless fling that went too far. He blamed the pregnancy, claimed he felt trapped, and even suggested that we could convince Tiffany to give up the baby. We can adopt, he texted. It will be like it is ours. It is still my child. She can go away. His delusion was staggering. Over the next weeks, I learned the full truth through mutual acquaintances and my own attorney's private investigator. All those days he claimed to be at Lonnie's? Many of them he was meeting Tiffany at hotels or at her apartment. He told her our marriage was miserable, that I was controlling, that I forced him to get jobs he hated. Lonnie did not discourage him. Instead, he encouraged him, saying Tiffany was more of a woman because she listened. One afternoon, while I was in labor with Zoe, they were together. That was why neither answered their phones. When I first told my parents about the affair, my father called Reggie and spent 15 straight minutes yelling at him on speakerphone in the next room. My mother tried repeatedly to cast doubt. Are you certain you read that text correctly? She asked again. I have known Tiffany her entire life, Tamara. I cannot believe she would do that. I showed her the screenshots. She went quiet, then shifted her focus to panic about my decision to divorce. My father and I met with his business attorney, who connected us with a top family lawyer. With the prenuptial agreement and Reggie's infidelity, the divorce proceedings would be straightforward. Custody would be the only challenge. My mother was vehemently against the divorce. She followed me from room to room, saying, You are tearing this family apart. Think of Jalen. Think of Zoe. Are you really going to destroy their home over one mistake? One mistake, I shouted. He is having a baby with my best friend. That is not a small error, Mother. People make mistakes, she insisted. Forgiveness is a virtue. Do not throw your marriage away. When she saw that I would not be swayed, her arguments changed in a way that chilled me. One afternoon, as I made a bottle for Zoe in the kitchen, she said casually, Maybe it would be better for the children to stay with their father. I froze. What did you say? I asked quietly. You are very emotional right now, she continued. You struggled with postpartum depression. The court might see you as unstable. Spencer, she caught herself, then corrected. Reggie is their father. He could handle full custody. You could visit. I thought I had misheard. Over the next few days, she repeated this idea in different ways, hinting that perhaps I should give up custody voluntarily. A cold dread formed in my stomach. I told my father what she had been saying. His face went ashen. We decided to confront her together. That evening, we sat in the living room, the television off, the house quiet. I looked my mother in the eyes and asked, Why have you been asking me to consider giving Reggie full custody of my children? Carolyn glanced at my father. Tell her she is being hysterical, she said. The divorce is making her irrational. My father did not move. Answer the question, Carolyn, Leon said. His voice was calm, which made it more frightening than shouting. After several tense minutes of pressing, she finally broke. She admitted that after I told her about the affair, she had gone to meet Tiffany at a coffee shop to hear her side. Instead of defending me, she listened while Tiffany cried and begged for understanding. Tiffany told her she was pregnant and needed Reggie to raise the baby. My mother, instead of walking out or condemning what they had done, felt sorry for Tiffany. She promised to help her financially, so she would not struggle. She suggested Tiffany and Reggie could continue their relationship quietly while he stayed married to me and supported both households. Tiffany refused that arrangement. She wanted Reggie fully. That was when my mother changed tactics. As she described it to us, she told Tiffany, If you are responsible for breaking up their marriage, you should be responsible for raising all of his children as well. According to her, Tiffany was shocked at first. Then my mother told her something that made my blood run cold. She told Tiffany that I had suffered from postpartum depression, that I was not a capable mother, that my children needed a healthy parent more than me. She said that if I gave Reggie full custody, the court would likely require me to pay considerable child support, and Tiffany and her baby could benefit from that money. My mother admitted all of this sitting on our sofa, wringing her hands. I was just trying to find a practical solution, she said. Tiffany's child is still your children's sibling. It made sense for them to be raised together. You are so fragile, Tamara. I was thinking of the children. I stared at her, unable to speak, tears streaming silently down my face. My own mother had gone behind my back to negotiate my children's future with the woman who had destroyed my marriage. She had portrayed me as mentally unfit and tried to convince my betrayer to take on my children in exchange for my money. My father stood up slowly. Get your things, Leon said, looking at Carolyn. Get out of this house. She gasped. Leon, I was trying to help. You know Tamara struggles. You thought you could sell our grandchildren, he said, still calm but deadly serious. You thought you could take the word of a woman who slept with our son-in-law over our daughters. You betrayed her. You betrayed me. Our marriage is over. Pack your bags. My mother began to sob, pleading for another chance. He walked out of the room without answering. I felt like the ground had opened under my feet. My husband, my best friend, and now my own mother had all betrayed me. The days that followed blurred together. My mother moved in with her sister. My father functioned like a quiet guardian, taking care of logistics while I drifted through the house in a haze. I sat in the nursery for hours holding Zoe and rocking back and forth while Jalen played at my feet. Sometimes Jalen would pat my arm with his small hand and say, "Sad mommy," and I would nod because I did not have words. My father made sure I ate and went to therapy. Our lawyer moved forward with filing for divorce and full custody. Throughout this time, Evelyn finally called me, for the first time since the affair had become public. She did not call to ask how I was. She called to complain about how Reggie was suffering. She told me how devastated his extended family was, how people were sending him harsh messages, how his reputation was ruined. She said I needed to consider retracting the divorce, to give him another chance. Men sometimes stray, she said. It is our responsibility as women to bring them back. Something inside me hardened completely. Be quiet, I said. There was silence on the line. What did you say? Evelyn asked. I said be quiet, I repeated. You should be ashamed that you raised a man who treats his wife like a bank account and his children like props. I took care of your son for 12 years while you took his money and criticized me. You have no right to ask me for anything now that he has gotten my best friend pregnant. If you call me again, I will ask my lawyer about including you in the restraining orders I am considering. She tried to backtrack, to apologize, but I hung up. It felt like closing the door on a long, suffocating chapter of my life. 6 months later, we were in court in Charlotte. I wore a simple black dress and held my head high. Reggie looked smaller than I remembered, his clothes loose, his eyes sunken. Evelyn sat in the back row, glaring at me. Tiffany did not attend. My lawyer was sharp and precise. Reggie's lawyer tried to argue for full or shared custody, painting me as unstable because of my postpartum depression. He tried to show me as emotional and irrational. My lawyer had prepared thoroughly. She presented evidence of Reggie's unemployment, his pattern of financial dependence, his absence during my pregnancies and births, and his infidelity. She showed photos of him drinking and playing games at Lonnie's apartment at 11 in the morning on weekdays and bank statements proving he had almost no income. When the judge delivered his decision, he looked directly at Reggie. Full legal and physical custody of Jalen and Zoe is awarded to their mother, Ms. Tamara, he said. Mr. Reggie will have supervised visitation twice a month at a facility designated by the court. Given the clear terms of the prenuptial agreement and the evidence presented, he will not receive spousal support or marital assets. He will pay monthly child support in an amount determined by his future income. This case is concluded. I watched Reggie's face crumple, and I felt nothing but a clean, quiet relief. After the hearing, I glanced back at Evelyn. She stared at me with unfiltered hatred. I met her gaze steadily and gave her the smallest smile. It was not joy. It was closure. Reggie shuffled out of the courtroom with his lawyer. I stepped into the hallway with my father. Leon squeezed my hand. You are free, he said simply. For the first time in years, I believed him. I drove home with my children in the back seat, sunlight streaming through the car windows, and felt my shoulders drop a little as if the weight I had been carrying had finally shifted. My mother has begged me and my father for forgiveness many times since that day, calling from her sister's house, leaving messages. My father has told her plainly that any reconciliation will require serious work. He insisted that she attend therapy and confront the beliefs that led her to side with a cheating man and his mistress over her own daughter. To her credit, she has been going regularly. I do not know what the future holds for their marriage, but I know one thing. My own relationship with her will never be the same. Some betrayals heal into scars. Some simply mark the place where something died. Sharon, on the other hand, has stood by me unwaveringly. She called me soon after the affair became public and cried with me on the phone. "I cannot believe my own daughter did this to you," she said, voice breaking. "You are the daughter I prayed for. I am done with her." She cut contact with Tiffany entirely. Months later, she called to tell me that she had updated her will. "My inheritance is going to you and the children," Sharon said. "Tiffany is removed. I cannot reward what she has done. You, Jalen, and Zoe are my family now. From mutual acquaintances, I have heard that Reggie refuses to marry Tiffany. He claims he never intended to leave me, only to sleep with her, and now feels trapped by the pregnancy. He sees the child occasionally, but he is distant. Evelyn is furious with him for losing access to Jalen and Zoe, and equally furious with Tiffany for ruining everything. Tiffany, who once told me she was taking him off my hands, now lives in a small apartment with a baby Reggie barely sees and a mother-in-law who resents her. She got exactly what she chased: a man who did not love her and a life built on the ashes of someone else's marriage. As for me, I am not interested in revenge anymore. I have my children. I have my work. My boss promoted me, and I am thriving in my role managing brand partnerships for major clients. I bought a smaller house in a quiet neighborhood and decorated it with colors I chose without asking anyone else's opinion. There are photos of Jalen and Zoe on every wall. On weekends, we go to the park, to museums, to visit my father. Sometimes we drive down to Atlanta to visit cousins. I do not spend my evenings arguing about money or watching a grown man play video games while I cook. Healing has not been neat or linear. There are nights when I still wake up from dreams where everything is normal, again, and feel grief hit me all over. There are days when a song or a smell sends me straight back to our old living room, and I have to remind myself that the woman who lived there, the one who believed she had to carry everyone, does not exist anymore. Therapy has helped. Time has helped. Watching Jalen's confidence grow and seeing Zoe's bright, fearless personality emerge has helped more than anything. People sometimes ask if I regret marrying Reggie or regret trusting Tiffany. I do not. I regret what they did, but I do not regret the path that led me to my children. Jalen and Zoe are the greatest gifts of my life. In a strange way, Reggie's betrayal was the final push I needed to escape a life that was slowly killing me with exhaustion and self-doubt. Without his affair, I might still be in that house cooking, cleaning, paying for everything, and raising my children and a grown man by myself. I also no longer doubt my own strength. I know now that I can survive heartbreak, betrayal, and the collapse of everything I thought was secure. I can stand in a courtroom, face the man who betrayed me and the woman who said she was doing me a favor, and walk out with my head high. I can rebuild. I can protect my children. I can choose myself without apologizing. I do not know what will happen with my mother. Perhaps one day we will sit across from each other in a cafe in Charlotte and speak honestly for the first time in years. Perhaps we will not. For now, I keep my distance. I have boundaries she never thought I would enforce, and that is something I have learned to be proud of. My father and I have grown closer than ever. He reminds me often, "We got you through the worst of it. The rest is just living." There is no tidy moral to this story. People you love can hurt you in ways you never imagined. Sometimes the person you have known for 20 years and call sister will be the one who cuts the deepest. Sometimes your own mother will choose convenience, optics, or money over your pain. And sometimes the people who were supposed to break you end up pushing you toward a life where you are finally allowed to breathe. I lost a husband, a best friend, and a version of my mother I will never get back. But I gained clarity. I gained a home that is peaceful. I gained evenings where my laughter is not forced. I gained mornings where my first thought is not, "How am I going to keep everyone else together?" But instead, "What kind of life am I going to build for myself and my children today?" Reggie and Tiffany can live with the choices they made. My mother can live with the choices she made. As for me, I am living with mine. And for the first time in a very long time, that feels like enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.